some rumors talking about a mine coming to our river. Yeah, that just blows my mind.
All right, let's bring on our next guest. Ladies and gentlemen, this man is an extremely learned scholar in mining and mining applications. He has worked diligently in the Crandon mine situation and many others. You'll enjoy his speech and delivery. Welcome to the stage, if you will, Dr. Al Gedicks.
I want to thank the Coalition for organizing this important event. This is a very critical period in the history of the opposition to the Back 40. First of all, it's a very long history that many of you may not be aware of because most of you probably become involved since the re-application of Aquila Mining Company in 2015.
In late 2016, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, the DEQ, granted a mine permit and air quality permits for the project. In 2017, Aquila expects to complete its feasibility study for the project and also anticipates receiving wetlands protection and water discharge permits from the state. So this year, the company hopes to finish permitting, publish its feasibility study, and raise the necessary project capital to build the Back 40 project.
But this project, in fact, goes back to the early 2000s, 2003, when Aquila was predicting that there would be a mine within 3 years of their application.
A private company was created to lease the land from the landowners. This private company put together funding for a drill program, and the first discovery hole was drilled in 2002.
And ever since 2003, they've been predicting that this project is going to be permitted and constructed in the next year.
Having first been discovered more than a decade ago, the Back 40 project has come a long way since the deposit was first discovered, and Aquila looks forward to continuing its partnership with the local community and other stakeholders to make this project a reality.
This project is going to be just as good for this community as anything else I've worked on. I also want to talk a minute about the Back 40 project because I've spent a lot of time working with them, and I've met with their investors, I've met with state agencies, I've been really involved in what's going on. This is a good company. There's no real issues here. And it'll be all settled in a year or two.
That has not happened, and the reason it has not happened is because people like you that have become educated and involved with the coalition and other groups in raising criticisms of this mine and the consequences of a mine on the Menominee River and in the homeland of the Menominee Indian tribe of Wisconsin. So first of all, I want to congratulate you for your continued involvement, enthusiasm, and support for this effort. This is what it takes to go against a coalition of powerful mining companies that have important legislators in their back pockets and that have the cooperation of complicit officials within regulatory agencies, which, as you saw in the film, are willing to violate their own laws and regulations to see this mine permitted, even though the staff that knows what the mine is going to do has raised substantial objections to the project.
What we have in front of us, 47 pages by the MDEQ, is a stinging assessment that this permit should not be granted by the MDEQ. And then 4 weeks later, as we all know, there's a letter from the director of the DEQ that an exception is being made and that the permit is granted.
So what I'd like to talk about, expanding on what you've already seen in Mark's excellent film, which details a slow-moving environmental disaster, a slow-moving disaster that releases acidic mine drainage and heavy metals in the environment and produces a toxic environment for animals, plants, the fish, the water that we drink over a long period of time. What I'd like to do today is talk about a different kind of, an additional level of disaster, which is a catastrophic event. And if you've been following the news, you may have heard about this Brazilian tailings dam disaster last January, which released over 3 billion gallons of toxic waste into a community surrounding the mine, killing over 200 people, and there's still 50 people that are missing from this sudden release of toxic waste material from a mining operation. The same design in Brazil that caused this major disaster, which has been described by Brazil and the international environmental community as the worst mining disaster in history, is using a technology which Aquila Mining is now proposing for the Back 40 project. All right, in the film, you saw about the problem of acid mine drainage and heavy metal contamination. And that is a function of the presence of sulfide minerals in the ore body. Another level of threat is the tailings. The tailings are what come out of the milling process after they separated the gold and the zinc. The tailings are a mixture of water, processed chemicals like sulfuric acid and cyanide in a heavy paste that is deposited in these tailings ponds. These ponds, which are over 100 feet high, this one is 138 feet high, and it covers over 100 acres. Everyone understands what the Lambeau field is in Green Bay. That's a typical size of a football field. Imagine 100 Lambeau fields on the banks of the Menominee River. That is what is being proposed for the Back 40 mine. The only reason we know about this is because of a hearing that took place in last January, where Aquila was required to present a revised mine plan because they have expanded the area of the mine to include an expanded tailings management facility. The tailings are the waste material, as I said, that comes out of the mine in a liquid paste that remains to a certain extent in a liquefied state for the entire life of the tailings management area. And it is this problem of the liquefaction of the waste which resulted in the disastrous tailings dam disaster in Brazil. And what happens is that the liquid waste becomes so powerful in destabilizing the sand, the tailings sand, which are fine-grained materials that are holding up the entire tailings dam, and they essentially create cracks in the tailings facility and release suddenly and catastrophically large amounts of toxic tailings into the surrounding environment. Brazil has banned this method of constructing a tailings dam. It's called the upstream tailings dam design, but it is now being proposed right next to the Menominee River by Aquila Mining Company and by the state of Michigan through the permitting process for the last permit that has not yet been granted, which is the dam and the air quality permit. All of this is part of a sophisticated psychological warfare operation on the part of both Aquila Mining Company and the state of Michigan to convince you that this mine is going to happen. And the way that they do that is consistently bombard the public with inaccurate, misleading, and outright falsifications of what is being proposed.
Aquila Resources says that they put measures in place to handle any type of catastrophe and that mining has come a long way.
It's evolved and the regulations have evolved, and the regulations are significantly tougher. The cost to build these facilities is a lot more because of those regulations. It's very good, very safe.
So as soon as the dam broke in Brazil in January of this year, we criticized the plans of Aquila Mining Company to use the same design which has now been banned in Brazil. In fact, all of the dams in Brazil that have this method of constructing are now being deconstructed. There are 88 tailings dams that are now being dismantled in Brazil because of the threat it poses to the community. This is a threat to life, it is a threat to the water supply, it is a threat to the entire ecosystem. This is what is being proposed in the dam permit application.
We're all here for maybe different reasons, but our end goal is the same, is to protect that river and all of the wildlife that doesn't have a voice.
And cyanide does kill.
No back 40! No back 40!
Demonstrators marched from Stevenson Island in Marinette over the Menominee River and into Michigan.
I'm concerned with the water.
Because the Menominee River flows into Lake Michigan.
And we all live downstream.
And an open pit sulfide mine has people worried.
We cannot let this happen to our people in our area. Please give us a hand and help us stop this mine.
This is Aquila right here.
There have been efforts to raise awareness.
Do you think they're protesting in the right way?
They've got the right to do that if that's what they want. But I think if they really want to protest the mine, they go to the mine site.
They go to
the Stevenson office.
The Stevenson office.
This is not Aquila's office.
But, I mean, I've been there. It's a very rural area. They probably get a lot of attention. They say that they're mostly here to educate the public. Do you think this is the best place to do that?
I think they need to educate themselves.
Educate themselves, you said. And where would they go to do that? Like online?
They can give us a call.
I can do that.
Part of the psychological warfare that's being promoted in this controversial project arises from the fact that this company knows that it cannot logically and scientifically and legally make a convincing case to the public for the project.
Tom Quigley made the discovery. He ran a geophysical survey on the road which showed that there was a strong indication for the potential of an ore body.
So Tom, are you still associated with Aquila Resources?
No, I'm not.
So now you think that you don't have responsibility anymore?
No, I think he said.
Are you comfortable poisoning people for money?
You don't want this.
I'm on the sidewalk.
Yes, but you're videotaping my property. Please leave. Please. No.
Horrible. We're fighting for the water for you as well. You get that on tape?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And so what they have to do is they have to lie, they have to withhold information, and they have to promote downright fraud in their public relations. So right after the dam broke in Brazil, they put out a full-page ad in the Eagle Herald showing how safe this design is. They never mentioned once the Brazilian Tailings Dam disaster. They did not mention that this design is being outlawed in Brazil and other countries. In fact, it is now being challenged by the mining industry itself. There are people in the mining industry, some of the largest companies in the world, that are saying that we cannot afford to risk our capital in promoting mining projects which have the potential to release catastrophic amounts of toxic materials into the environment and assume the liability for the damages that those events will cause. Let me reinforce the extreme danger that this poses to the Menominee River and to all of us who value the water, the wildlife, and the ecology of the area. This is the most recent report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which says that the Great Lakes region is warming faster than the rest of the United States, a trend likely to bring more extreme storms and also degrade water quality. All right, so the very design of this tailings dam is already at risk because of the liquefied nature of the material in the tailings dam, which is inherently unstable and which is subject to catastrophic release of these materials. You combine that with extreme weather events predicted by the climate panel, and what you have is a perfect storm, literally a perfect storm, which will inundate the tailings management area and essentially inundate that with water that cannot be contained within the tailings area, and which will essentially destroy the fragile foundations of these tailings dams. These tailings dams are not like a water dam. A water dam is made out of concrete and steel. Right, that concrete and steel is not going to suddenly release all the water in the dam. These dams are made out of fine, sandy material coming out of the mill, the size of talcum powder or individual sands that you find in the beach. These are extremely fine-grained materials, And when you inundate those fine-grained materials with large amounts of water, as predicted by these weather reports, you create an inevitable disaster which will release all this material into the environment. One of the people that is being called upon for their expertise in the contested case is David Chambers, who is an expert, internationally recognized expert on tailings dam design. This is what he says based upon his expert review of the record of tailings dams around the world. The failure rate of tailings dams has remained at roughly 1 failure every 8 months. That is 3 failures every 2 years. Over a 10,000-year lifespan. And of course, these are permanent structures. These are not waste materials that are simply going to be there for the life of the mine. These large amounts of waste are going to be there in perpetuity, over thousands of years. And so, he goes on, over a 10,000-year lifespan, which is a conservative estimate of how long these wastes will be in the environment, this implies a significant and disproportionate chance of failure for a tailings dam. All right, if you look at the website of Aquila Mining Company, they tell their investors that everything is all tied up, all the permits have been granted. That is a bold-faced lie. They still have not got a permit for their tailings dam facility, and that is, according to the United Nations, the most vulnerable part of a mining project. Let me cite a UN report about the danger posed by tailings dams. This is the environmental program of the United Nations, which has carried out scientific investigations of the performance of these tailings dams around the world. What they conclude, despite good intentions and investments in improved practices, large storage facilities built to contain mine tailings can leak or collapse. These incidents are even more probable due to climate change effects. When they occur, they can destroy entire communities and livelihoods and remain the biggest environmental disaster threat related to mining. It is an element of success in Aquila Mining Company that up until this point, most people are not aware that this is in fact the Achilles heel of this entire project. These tailings dams, as I said, are large permanent structures that pose a perpetual threat to the environment, clean drinking water, and to the livelihoods of people along that river, and it has not been part of a public discussion or public debate. In fact, a number of people, Tom Berner in particular, has consistently challenged Aquila to appear in a public forum and debate the merits of the proposed mine with people that understand what the risks are. So far, there's been a deafening silence on the part of Aquila. They do not want to appear in public because they know precisely well that people that are educated about this, as you all are capable of demolishing the thin arguments that are being made in favor of this mining project.
I don't think that there is one example you can show in the history of the world where at some point a sulfide mine has not failed to pollute.
I don't think we can point to a single automobile either. Or
no, wait a minute. That kind of argument, that kind of logic, in a moment, sir, that kind of logic does not hold water, and we're not going to accept that.
Okay. You're asking me questions that are impossible to answer. You're asking me to guarantee geologic events at a godly level. I can't answer.
Our way of life depends on you being able to guarantee that this is safe. The risk and reward for you collecting a paycheck from Ms. Lassard, the risk may be acceptable. For your investors, the risk who do not live here, the risk may be acceptable. I want a guarantee that you are not going to pollute our water.
And they are afraid that if this information becomes public, that they are incompetent and unable to respond to the most elementary criticisms of their mine project, that the confidence of their investors in Canada and the United States will evaporate. And that is why this is the Achilles heel of the project.
Do you feel that you could personally guarantee that this mine is not going to pollute?
Well, that's an unfair question. I mean, you're asking somebody who's a state employee who's got a a job to do and meet the requirements of the law, I can guarantee you we are confident that the permit meets the requirements of the law.
Aquila is a cash-poor company. It does not have its own financing to see this project through. They are dependent upon hedge funds, 4 hedge funds in the United States and Canada that are supplying bit by bit all the funds necessary to go through the permit process. And once they go through the permit process, Aquila will sell the project to a company that actually has some mining experience and make a profit. But until that happens, this is a very serious risk to investors. And that is why last week I sent a letter to all 4 investors, Orion Mine Finance, Osisko Gold Royalties in Canada, Ruffer in England, and Hudbay in Canada, with 28 pages of letters to the editor from the Eagle Herald of citizens like you that have educated yourselves about this project and written letters criticizing one or more aspects of this project. Those investors are going to learn for the first time that this is why this is a risky project. There were no letters in favor of the mine, except one letter from Chantal Lassard, who said, let's have a dialogue. And when she was asked to have a dialogue, all of a sudden she clammed up.
What did Chantal stand there? Did she answer any questions? None.
She doesn't want to have any kind of public forum in which people actually get to discuss these projects.
The other thing I want to mention to you, and I hope that we would have been able to ask David Anderson these questions, but we were not.
We come here of our own free will. We've been to meetings on meetings on meetings of our own free time. We don't get paid to come here. We don't get paid to go out and walk the bridge or stand and protest in front of some establishments. We come in an effort to try and keep our water clean, to protect our children. It doesn't even matter about my life anymore. It matters about my children, my grandchildren, and their children to come.
In my humble opinion, you need an ordinance to stop metallic sulfide mining.
So the bottom line is that this is a risky project, both financially and environmentally, and we have exactly the kind of coalition that is capable of stopping this project.
We don't want to risk our water. I grew up on the river, so
right on.
That's a scary thought. So
I agree with you.
I'm with you guys.
We have environmental groups, we have sport fishing groups, we have religious communities, we have the Menominee Indian tribe in Wisconsin, we have resolutions up and down the Menominee River, from Marinette and Menominee to Green Bay, that have unanimously opposed this project and sent a message that there is no public support for this project.
For the past many months, outlandish videos have been made of myself and my husband. My character has been criticized. I have been called an infiltrator and a carpetbagger. And I have weekly picketers outside of my business. How many of them actually live within the city? It was good for me to get away for a couple of days. I was able to look from the outside in. As I drove home from Minneapolis this morning, I took back roads to drive through small communities. When I came into Menominee, I saw all these bizarre blue signs.
God's looking down on us saying, folks, I need a hand to stop the mine. Let's stop the mine. Yes, the Great Spirit's crying, 'cause nature will be dying. So let's stop the mine. What do you say?
More and more Save the River signs can be seen on both sides of the river as people are now learning and understanding the dangers of a sulfide mine. They want to keep their children and grandchildren safe, as well as generations to follow.
No back 40, save the Menominee River. No back 40! No back 40, save the Menominee River. No back 40. No back 40.
No back 40, save the water. Menominee River. No back 40. No back 40.
And this, of course, is what makes sense to the investors. They understand that projects which are significantly opposed by local communities are extremely risky projects, and those projects eventually get canceled because investors who could care less about the environment do care about their bottom line of profit, and that is what makes this project a project which will go down in defeat because of the efforts of you and your persistence over time. Thank you. Dr. Gedicks, thank you.
The only swimming we will do is in the tears we cry. We'll never again catch a fish or see the eagle fly. So it's now or never to stop the mine. Oh, let's stop the mine.